human brain has a few distinct modes of operation, and these can be and often are exploited by politicians, statisticians, salespeople, and others who understand how the human brain works. And I want to briefly explain how that works so that you can recognize it and perhaps avoid it. So the first part of your brain is your cognitive brain. Humans have a large prefrontal cortex. It's the front part of the brain. It was the last part of the brain to evolve. And this is the part where we do reasoning, thinking, reading, writing, planning. This is where we decide that we're going to go on a diet and lose 20 pounds. And this is where we're determined to stick with the diet. This is the part of the brain that we like to think is in control. But if our prefrontal cortex isn't in control, what part of the brain is in control? There's another part of the brain which is much more primitive. They refer to that as the lizard part of the brain. There's also a mammal part, which I'll get into in a minute, but the lizard brain is located at the top of the spine. It's comparatively small, and it's the oldest part of the brain. It's called the lizard brain because even an animal as primitive as a lizard will have this part of the brain. It's responsible for what psychologists refer to as the 4 F's: fighting, flighting, food, and reproduction. This part of the brain is responsible for keeping you alive. That's essentially it. After the reptile part of the brain, you have the mammal part of the brain. And something that it's important to understand, and something that lawyers and marketers do understand, is that in order for thoughts to reach your cognitive mind, they first have to filter through the other 2 layers. You cannot have a conscious thought about something until it has already been screened and processed by the 2 primitive layers. There's a condition called hysterical blindness, and someone with this condition has fully functioning eyes, but for some reason the signals from the eyes don't reach the brain. Hysterical blindness frequently occurs as the result of a traumatic situation or witnessing a traumatic situation. Psychologists can resolve hysterical blindness through therapy, hypnotherapy, and other things. Essentially, what they do is they clear up the channel and allow the more primitive part of the brain to send the visual signal on to the brain. That's just one example. Another example of this is when you try to diet and you try to willpower your way into not eating for an extended period of time. And it's worth noting that this refers to someone who is not fat adapted, meaning that they just burn fat spontaneously and don't really get hungry. But what happens is, after you've gone for a while without eating, the lizard part of your brain says, I'm taking over, you're starving us to death. And next thing you know, wrappers are flying and you're gorging yourself. And then when you're done, the cognitive mind takes control back and you ask yourself, what have I done? I've blown my diet, I've put on weight. The lizard part of your brain has done its job, it's kept you alive, and so on. So if you're going to do a diet, you need to find out how to do it in a way that doesn't activate or threaten the lizard part of your brain. So how could someone exploit this? Well, there were 2 lawyers. They weren't even subtle about it. They wrote a book, and the name of the book is Reptile, and their goal was to reform tort law in the United States. These 2 lawyers were on the prosecuting side. They were trying to reform tort law. In other words, they were trying to get the jury to rule against the defendant. In this book, Reptile, I talk about how to appeal to a jury's primitive fears and how to appeal to their primitive urges so that the jury's mind makes them incapable of ruling in the favor of the defendant. They make it a matter of safety, they make it a matter of survival. They say things like, this could happen to you, this could happen to anyone. If you don't prosecute, this type of situation could go on and cause danger. If you're interested in reading this book, all you have to do is go to their website and buy it for $100. But there's a catch, and the catch is that you have to prove to them that you are a prosecuting tort attorney, and hopefully I'm getting the legal terms right here, but the point is that they'll sell you this book if and only if you're going to use it to advance their cause. We're sophisticated humans, why don't we just go on eBay and buy it? Well, you can. It runs about $1,000 a copy for the paperback. Somebody thinks this book works, but that's what they play on, is they play on a more primitive part of your brain's ability or tendency to curate the information that it receives before it sends it on to the cognitive brain. But there's one more layer we have to get through first. The other layer of the brain is the mammalian brain. And if you want to know what this part of your brain is like, think back to junior high where you have the cool kids, you have rich kids, you have the social kids, you have drama people, you have physics people. Everyone is trying to find a tribe. And that's what this part of the brain is responsible for, is tribal interaction or tribal behavior. This is the part of the brain that recognizes when another person is an alpha. You've probably observed this dynamic when some people just exude a presence. They're an alpha, if you want to think of them that way. Some people resent the alpha, that's fine, but nonetheless, people do have different statuses. The mammalian part of your brain responds to this instinctively. If the mammalian part of your brain didn't respond to this historically, and you did something that upset your tribe, you would find yourself out in the cold, kicked out of your tribe, and that was basically a death sentence for both you and your genes. So if somebody had genes that didn't respect the alpha, they probably died off in several tens of thousands of years ago and are not here with us today. So if you're here with us today, it means you probably have those mammalian tendencies. Marketers know this, so that's why they will have a celebrity promote a product. Now, your cognitive mind says, I make rational decisions. I'm not going to buy something just because the football quarterback is holding it. But the reality is, if advertising weren't effective, they wouldn't sell Super Bowl time for millions of dollars per minute. And similar to the reptilian brain, in order for a signal to make it up to the cognitive brain, it has to pass through the mammalian brain. Now, let me give an example of how the mammalian brain curates information. Think of the political party that you identify with. Name 10 positive things about the opposing political party. Or think of 5 credible news articles that recently spoke favorably about the opposing political party. My guess is that you can't do it. Somebody from that political party easily could, but you can't. It's not just that you're unwilling to, you legitimately can't. And the reason for this is that information is getting curated by the mammalian part of your brain. That's one of the things I don't like about this polarized political state that we're in right now. It's tribal, which means that everyone is not only unwilling, but probably genuinely unable to see things from the other party's point of view. The problem with a tribal mentality is that it carries with it the fear that if you do something to upset the tribe, you're going to be excluded from the tribe, and instinctively we're afraid of that. And in fact, our mammalian brain won't let that happen. Similar to how your reptilian brain won't let you starve yourself, the mammalian part of your brain won't let you do something that will get you ostracized. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to the news and how they pander to mostly to the reptilian part of the brain. If it bleeds, it leads. The reptilian part of our brain evolved for survival, and so if we see something that makes us feel threatened, we respond. And we don't respond rationally. It makes us unable to respond rationally. Millennia ago, if someone stumbled into camp bleeding, we panicked. We needed to panic. Nowadays, you'll see a news story of somebody bleeding on the other side of the planet, and you still react the same way. The reptilian part of your brain still goes into defense mode. And the news companies know this. That's why they play it. Marketers and salespeople also recognize the power of the mammalian brain and how it curates information, which is why they use celebrities to promote their causes. Honestly, that's why most people are nicer to good-looking people. That's why people who are perceived as alphas are given special benefits and privileges by other people. And the people who give them these privileges consider it an honor to do so. There's a lot more to talk about. We won't go into a lot more today. But hopefully this gives you something to think about. Are you really the one making the decisions? Are you really being rational? How can you avoid exposing yourself to situations where other people are able to trigger or manipulate the reptilian part of your brain? Perhaps turn off the TV, or perhaps spend less time on social media. There's also ways that you can manipulate or trick people into thinking that you're an alpha. That'll be a talk for another time. Hope this is helpful. Click subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.